For Kentucky, it was just like everyone else in the SEC, an all-SEC schedule in 2020. Looking ahead to 2021 to get that matchup with Louisville back in the non-conference. And, of course, they had to play Alabama last year. They don't have to play Alabama this year, so that is good news. They were 5-6 last season. This is the schedule. And before we get into the game-by-game schedule, let's look at who they play outside of the division, because we know who they're going to play. They're going to play all the teams in the SEC East. But outside of the division, first of all, in the non-conference, they'll play ULM, Louisiana Monroe, Chattanooga, New Mexico State, and then on the road at Louisville. Those three games outside of Louisville are going to be very easy. Let's just be honest. ULM has had some decent years in the past, but last year they were horrible. New Mexico State, one of the worst teams outside of the Power 5, then Chattanooga, an FCS team. That's not a bad non-conference schedule at all. Now, Louisville, how good will they be? They weren't great last year. They were kind of a surprise a couple of years, so it's hard to really say about this team. And it's definitely not a huge task for Kentucky. I mean, that's definitely a winnable game. They'll probably be favored in that game. So, yes, non-conference schedule, not bad at all for the Wildcats. And then out of the SEC West, they play Mississippi State every year. That's their crossover rival. They'll play them on the road this year, so they're going to have to deal with the Cowbells. And then they'll also play LSU. They will play LSU this year, which I think is a pretty tough draw. I think LSU is the second or third best team in the West, but you avoid Alabama, and you're going to have to play a team like LSU or Texas A&M probably. So not a bad draw there at all. So Kentucky's schedule outside of the division looking pretty good. They start with ULM again on September the 4th. That'll be a home game. And then they jump right into SEC play the next week against Missouri on September 11th. That is going to be a big game, and a game that, I think it could potentially be a battle for third place in the SEC East, whoever wins that game. It depends on how good Florida's going to be. It could potentially even be a battle for second place in the SEC East. So that's a big game early in the year as far as the standings go. They have Chattanooga after that on September 18th. Then they'll play on the road at South Carolina. That appears to be a game that Kentucky will be favored in. Florida after that on October the 2nd. A big game there. And if they are going to challenge in the East and maybe challenge for the number 2 spot, they probably will have to beat Florida at home. That's a game you got to get. And, it used to be that we wouldn't even talk about Kentucky beating Florida. They lost so many years in a row. But now we're starting to see them compete. They beat them. And it's a game that Kentucky's going to look at as being a potential win. LSU the next week on October the 9th. That's a couple of tough games back-to-back, but at home. That's the good news. LSU and Florida back-to-back there at home. But then it's Georgia after that on October 16th. So we're talking about a brutal 3-game stretch. Florida, LSU, and on the road at Georgia. It does not get much tougher than that in the SEC. And then they do get a bye week, though. They get a bye week after Georgia. So it's back-to-back road games here, but not back-to-back weeks. They'll have a bye week between Georgia and Mississippi State. Again, have to deal with the Cowbells there, playing the Bulldogs. Then Tennessee on November the 6th. Vanderbilt November 13th. So you can see here, once you get to the end of October, really starting, I guess, with Mississippi State, the schedule lightens up. It's right there in the middle. Florida, LSU, and Georgia. That's the tough part of the schedule. So Vanderbilt November 13th, and they'll play New Mexico State on November 20th. Louisville on the road November 27th. And again, it's great to have that rivalry back this year. But again, when you look at the schedule for Kentucky, if you take out Florida, LSU, Georgia, now that's a brutal stretch. Like I said, you take that out of the schedule and just look at the other 9 games, this is a really nice schedule for Kentucky. I mean, a really nice schedule. You get Missouri at home. That is probably the toughest game from the rest of those games. And then you've got, Mississippi State's going to be a tough one on the road. That's probably their toughest game on the road outside of Georgia, I would say. Tennessee, Vanderbilt, South Carolina going to be down this year. So you get 3 games that are going to be, I wouldn't say wins, but games where Kentucky's going to be favored in the East. And then you also get 3 easy non-conference games. So you're looking at 6 wins. If you take care of business in those games that you should, there's a very easy path to 6 wins for Kentucky. Now, again, there are some tough stretches here. Going from Florida to Georgia, that's brutal. There are going to be tough games. Mississippi State on the road is going to be a tough game. Louisville is probably going to be a tough game. Missouri in week 2 going to be a tough game. But all in all, I would say Kentucky's schedule for 2021 is very favorable compared to some of the other teams in the SEC.